Hello everybody, me Mutahar, and today's video is brought to you by our good old friends at Manscaped.com, our good old long-term friends. Ladies and gentlemen, they are in fact the global brand for men's grooming and hygiene products. You know, I love Manscaped because they offer the best tools, we're talking, for your butt, body, and balls. Lately they released the Lawnmower 4.0, which is in fact a waterproof electric trimmer, and now you can get the ultimate Manscaped experience when you purchase the new and improved Performance Package 4.0. With the Performance Package, you really never have to worry about a complicated multi-step grooming regimen anymore. Everything is provided right there. It's an all-in-one kit that includes all the tools you necessarily need to get the ultimate man grooming experience. Let me tell you, be ready for almost anything. Because let me tell you, when I start grooming myself in the shower with this little beauty, I can maneuver all the way around my balls and actually feel confident because I won't have any nasty messes down there. Lord knows I don't want to relive that experience again. Lawnmower 4.0 has replaceable ceramic blades with skin-safe technology and a built-in LED. And with a new, cool, wireless, futuristic charging system and travel locking, you never have to worry about upgrading your trimmer game. You're already at the zenith. And after you have that juicy little shower, be ready to apply some Crop Preserver ball deodorant. For that midday refresher though, you gotta make sure you have some Crop Reviver ball toner spray with cooling aloe vera and anti-inflammatory properties. Your balls are gonna feel pretty premium. Manscaped is a lot more than just a ball trimming company. In fact, let's be honest here, they also have the new Weed Whacker nose and ear hair trimmer. And this thing is as a game changer as is the good old-fashioned lawnmower, because let me tell you, when you're pulling out hairs from your nostrils, it don't feel too good. This takes away a lot of that pain, and no one needs pain in their life. And when you opt in for that full Performance Package 4.0, you get the biggest bang for your buck. You can enroll in the Peak Hygiene Plan and get ongoing refreshments of your favorite products delivered straight to your door, hassle-free. And for a limited time, if you join now, you get not one, but two gifts, the Shed Travel Bag and the Anti-Chafing Boxer Briefs. So yeah, go to manscaped.com today and get 20% off plus free international shipping with the two free gifts when you use promo code SOG at checkout. Join the Manscaped movement today. Man maintenance for the modern gentleman. Your balls and your body will thank you. Hello guys and gals, me Mutahar, and PlayStation 4s are even more hackable than you can expect. Version 9.0, kernel level. Without a joke, ladies and gentlemen, this might be one of the biggest pieces of hacks that I've ever seen in the console gaming sphere. And if it's something you know about my channel is, occasionally from time to time, I like hacking basically any single system that I have. It could be Granny's Pacemaker, it could be a Super Nintendo, it could be a Game Boy Advance, it could be a DS, it could be a Wii U, but I'm most excited about these new not new, but PlayStation 4s, which are the more advanced versions of all that previous hardware, much more powerful capabilities, and of course with more powerful capabilities comes more powerful emulation, comes a better game preservation, and the ability to mod a lot of these console games that I haven't been able to do before this day. Now, this is a new jailbreak that's come to us, and the reason it's so big, and the reason I'm making a video on it is, quite honestly, it is a kernel level break. Now, we've talked about hacked PS4s before. I even showed you how to run Halo Master Chief Collection on an actual PlayStation 4 that was hacked before. This exact same slightly used PlayStation 4, and the reality is a lot of things have changed since then. Again, may I remind you, this is a kernel level out of bounds jailbreak. In fact, let's look at the GitHub real quick together. PlayStation 4 9.0 kernel exploit, also known as Poops4, which obviously P for PlayStation, OOB for out of bounds, and S4 for the station and 4. But here you can go down in this project, you will find an implementation that tries to make use of a file system bug for the PlayStation 4 on version 9.0. The bug was found while diffing the 9.0 and 9.03 kernels. It will require a drive with a modified exFAT file system. Successfully triggering it will allow you to run arbitrary code as kernel to allow jailbreaking and kernel level modifications to the system. We'll launch the usual payload launcher on port 9020. So here it's giving you a bunch of patches, it's giving you a short how-to, but in general, let's get this started. So I'm going to be doing this in a live fashion today with you guys, and for this you're going to need obviously a PlayStation 4. Now you're going to want to have a flash drive as well, very important. I got a 64 gig one right here, but basically you need anything 2 GB and above. I got a 64 gig because that's what I had sitting around. But of course, as far as the PlayStation goes, the most important aspect is to make sure that this use slightly PlayStation 4, which by the way, Kijiji should really have an option to like verify even harder, because with the amount of games that the person I bought installed, this is not slightly used, by the way. May I remind you that this person was like halfway through Persona 5. If you're halfway through Persona 5, your PlayStation isn't slightly used anymore. I'm just putting it out there. But let's go to settings over here, all jokes aside. And if you look inside the avenue for what believes to be like system, you can see that right here. I've got version 7.55, which means I'm good. If you're above version 9.0 in this list, you're not going to be able to get anywhere, okay? You're too highly updated for this case. But let's say you're on version 7.55 or version 9.0 and below. You want to touch exactly version 9.0. So the way that we're going to do that is we're going to download a firmware file from PlayStation. But most importantly, first things first, you want to make sure you go to that juicy, network? And you want to make sure that connect to the internet, that's completely disabled. If it's not, you're going to have a bad time. Disable all internet access. Now here we're going to have a flash drive over here real quick, and if I can switch back to my PC, we're going to stick this into my computer over here and just get it running. So, let me just put it in, and lo and behold, ooh, that was a loud noise. Lo and behold over here, you can see that I have it registered on my system. Now you're going to format this, and you're going to format it to FAT32. Now if you have a 64 gigabyte flash drive, you may notice that Windows does not give you a FAT32 option. So for this, there are several tools that you can use. For instance, I went to the site called Rich Crop Consultants Limited. Again, I don't know if I necessarily trust that specifically, but because I do everything in a virtual machine, I don't exactly care necessarily about how shady some softwares can be. So you're going to click this JPEG and download this tool, and it's a 76 kilobyte tool, and it literally allows you to format as FAT32. Again, I'm going to throw this into Virus Total and just see what the results are. And it does, in fact, ring up... Look, I'm running it under a virtual machine, okay? I wouldn't recommend you download the software and run it on your bare system. Again, there are a bunch of other avenues. Just simply Google how to format as FAT32. You're gonna need to do that. If you're using Linux, you can actually use a command line tool, but I'm just showing you how to do this in Windows because I know most people are using Windows. Open this tool once, and you'll notice, here's FAT32 format. So again, go to Drive. And inside the drive, you're going to pick the exact drive path that you use. The way that you figure this out is open up File Explorer. And inside over here, you can see that my local disk is C, so you don't want to format C, and you probably can't. And this is my big 1 terabyte drive. I definitely don't want to format that, or I'm going to actually punch my monitor. And D is the flash drive. You can tell because I have 59 gigs of free space. So usually with the flash drive is 64, you'll have slightly lower space. But basically at this point, you want to pick drive D in this list. You want to just set that to like the highest allocation size, especially if you're dealing with bigger files like we are, and just give it a label, okay? So you can call this PS4, you can call it butt plug, I don't care. You're going to hit quick format and hit start, and basically once you've done that, it'll be a quick little job, and now you should be able to actually stick things into this drive. So let's get a copy of PlayStation 4's version 9.0 firmware. So over on the site Wololo, which I'll try to leave the links in the description as much as I can, you'll find out that right over here they actually have a couple Internet Archive links of PlayStation System Firmware 9.0. There are other websites you can use. For instance, this is Dark Software's official firmware. You're going to have to register an account, but basically you're going to scroll down this list and download where it says version 9.0. So it's about 467 megabytes. You can make an account, download it, but you want version 9.0 specifically, not 9.0 beta 2.0 or 9.03. You want 9.00, simple as that. Whatever you do not want to go to PlayStation's website and download from them. They will always give you the latest version. And again, the only real difference between 9.00, which added a bunch of new main features, and version 9.03 is the system software updates improve system performance. Yeah, this basically means PlayStation found this exploit and patched it. I mean, I guess the performance may be better. but we all know what's really going on with this bullshit patch note. Now, in order to update the PlayStation to that version 9.0 that we were just getting, what you want to do is you want to copy this, okay? Copy the PS4 update pup once it's downloaded. Again, it's 478 megabytes. You're going to go to your actual drive, and inside your drive that you just formatted, you're going to make a new folder called PS4. And within that folder, you're going to make another folder called Update. And again, it has to be all caps right here. So at this point, paste that update file right in here, and it'll take, a bit of time. Obviously, man, USBs are goddamn slow, but here it'll take like 45 seconds. So again, make yourself some coffee with G Fuel like I do, and go ahead and have a good time. So again, like most flash drives, make sure you eject it first, alright, and get that safe to remove hardware, and then finally once that's done, wait a second, and then pull it out. Simply because you don't want to screw up any of the copy process. Now, because this is slightly larger than I expected, you can see that the ports over here are really small on the PS4. You're going to have to finagle and find one behind the system, so let me just try to stick your dick in a Cheerio. And once that's done, we can now update. So let's go back to the PlayStation over here, and right now we can go to what is System Software Update, and immediately, because I plugged in the flash drive, it doesn't have any connection to the internet. You can see that it says the following version of the system software is available, version 9.00. So hit next and hit update. And once that's done, it'll copy the update file to the system and go through the process. Again, you don't want to do this through the internet or even have the PlayStation connected to the internet. If that is the case, you may run into issues where it may choose to download the newer software. It may choose to have issues. But this method works as far as I know. Alright, so now that it's done, we've logged back into the updated PlayStation. Of course, you can see nothing's changed. I've got Shadow of the Colossus installed, some RetroArch, and in fact some good old-fashioned Halo Hentai XXX. But of course, I can't just start this piece of software. Of course, Sony would love for me to actually try buying this in the store. That game does not exist, don't try to attempt this. Go to settings real quick, and if you scroll all the way down to system and system information, you can see that now we're on version 9.0. So the real hack can begin. So that being said, let's get back to the main menu of the affair and actually go back to our computer. Now this part is where we actually flash the USB, so we're going to take a little closer look here, and I'm going to show you how to build this right now from scratch. I'm going to show you every step right now to make this super simple. First things first, you're going to want something called Rufus USB, okay? You're going to search that up and click on this, okay? So it's rufus.ie, and you want this tool specifically to write an image file to the actual USB drive that you're going to be plugging in when you're actually trying to run this payload to actually jailbreak the PlayStation. So you're going to download Rufus 3.17, right? You're just going to store it somewhere. You need this tool. Now you're going to open a new tab and you're going to type in GitHub POOB S4. And in this moment, you're going to click on this chendochap/poobs S4. This is the Git repository that we were using for this hack. Okay, I'm going to show you this all, no cut, so everyone can follow along. Now, inside this list, the most important tool is xfathacks.image, okay? So you're going to click this, and where it says download right here, download that and store it somewhere. Now here I've got all these files saved up and ready to go. So we're going to open up Rufus 3.17, and this is going to launch Rufus 3.17 on our device. Now in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to find the USB we want to modify. So if you can't spot your USB, you can click list USB hard drives, and this will list it'll enumerate as many drives as you can. But what's important over here is finding the flash drive that we need specifically for this purpose. Now I'm going to pull out one drive just to make this a little simple for myself, and inside this list we're going to see devices. Now it only has one device, which is a 64 gig drive that I have. Now the drive that I showed you earlier in the video did not function properly, and this is an issue sometimes. So again, if your drive isn't working, keep flashing different USB drives. Eventually you'll find one that hopefully doesn't have an issue. So click this, and inside where it says boot selection, you're going to click the select button right here, and you're going to go to where that image file we downloaded from the Git repository is stored. So xfathacks. So click on that, and here you can see everything's basically grayed out. Now once that's good, hit start, and it'll check for conflicting processes. It's going to take a little bit of time, but it's going to give you one warning. Now remember, this will delete all the data on the drive. So here it says all data on device will be destroyed. Again, you have a lot of fail safes for this. So hit OK, wait for this to delete partitions, and it'll write really quickly. It's a very small image file anyways. So once that's done, we can now move on to the next step, which is actually running this payload on the 9.0 enabled PlayStation 4. Alright, so now that we're actually back into the good old-fashioned PlayStation world, the system is ready to go. We are ready to do the final leg of the journey. So open up a little web browser real quick, and the first thing you want to do is you want to hit the Options button, and you want to go to what is Settings, and you want to just delete the cookies, you want to clear website data, but also you want to go over here and go to Browsing History, and you just want to start clearing all of it. And then you want to open up R2, and basically where you can see all these frequently used pages, you want to just delete all. The reason why we're doing all of this to begin with is we're trying to clear as much space in the PlayStation as we can in this browser, because we want to run these exploits, but we also want to make sure that when these exploits are running, we don't want to have like any, we don't want them to fail. This will increase the success rate by like tenfold, okay? So inside frequently used web pages, you're going to go to enter URL. So just navigate there. And inside here, you're going to type in like nightKinghost.com. All right, so let's do nightKinghost.com. And just do /900 for obviously firmware 9.0. So again, we're going to hit enter. It's going to install the offline cache, which means even if you disable the internet connectivity, within this web browser, because it's storing it on the browser cache, you should still be able to access this without the internet, which is obviously very good. Because this jailbreak, by the way, is a tethered break, which means every time you turn off the PlayStation 4 completely and reboot into it, you will actually need to go through this entire step over and over again, because again, it's not a tethered break. It's not like we're installing a sketchy firmware file anyways, right? Or a customized firmware file to be more specific. But now it's going to tell you to close the internet browser, hit the PlayStation button, hit X, and now the browser is now re-enabled, and you should hopefully, well, first you're going to get this PlayStation 4 thing going on. It's going to start caching this too. But you want to hit R2, and you want to go to Night King for 9.0. And basically over here, you just want to actually close this as well too. So you just only want to have this browser at all, period. Once you're here, you're going to hit Gold Hen 2.0 B2. All right, so hit X. And you can actually see that underneath all of this, there's a bunch of other things too, which we'll all touch upon. But once you've hit this, you're going to wait for an error message to appear, okay? And this error message is going to tell you to stick a USB drive into. So just wait a little bit. And once you see insert USB drive, do not close dialog until notification pops up. So now you want to go back here and you want to stick that drive in. And once you see a little notification on the top left, there it is. The USB storage device file system is unsupported. Once you see that, hit OK. And hopefully at this point, it should all load the exploit just as you would expect. So it should be working just fine. Look at that. Gold Hen version 2.0. At this point, pull out the USB drive because you don't really want to have it plugged in once all of this is said and done. So close the web browser, and you actually have the firmware now loaded up. So now your PlayStation has been compromised. It's good to go. Again, pull out the USB drive once everything is done. Literally, because if you don't, and you have it running while the system is booting, or you turn it off, it's going to, I think it may cause damage at some point to the system. So unplug it after you're done, because once it's all good to go, go to your settings real quick, and you should see Gold Hen at the top, which is a good sign that you have compromised said system. In fact, I think in the system information, it'll even tell you Hen 9.0, which is Homebrew Enabler. Obviously, that's what it stands for. Version 2.0 B2, coded by Sistro. So again, go to the top here real quick, and you can enable things like an FTP server, which will allow you to actually, send files through the FTP to the PlayStation, so you don't need any massive flash drives. Enable bin loader server, and of course, you've also got a package installer, so you can install stuff from USB devices onto the actual system right here. Again, you can also go to debug settings, and you can modify a bunch of options over here. Again, know what you're doing before you touch this, but generally the option is now there. Now, of course, the big benefit of this is games that were once locked, like for instance PT, which actually has a little lock to it, which would signify that I have to buy this from the store, I can now hit the X button and launch this application and play any game backup that I have. So again, we're loading up over here. We got a little bit of that black screen nonsense going around, so I think it's loading up. Yeah, you've got the little loading section over here. Okay, so it works. Everything is there. PT is right now working. And of course, you can also like record, and you can actually start recording the footage too. So you could literally save video clips and have a day. But here it is. PT is up, just to show you the game is functioning. A game that you, by the way, can't even install on PlayStations now, is backed up and preserved, and it's running as you could expect. But obviously you can see that even when it comes to PlayStation 2 games like Persona 3 FES that I saved, we're going to launch that, and I'm going to show you even this works as well as you could expect. So these are package files that I made with PlayStation 2 ISOs running in them, so of course it's telling you that video recording errors are occurring, but go beyond that, and of course you can see I'm loading up PlayStation 2 games, and this is, in fact, Persona 3 FES running underneath basically this PlayStation 4 homebrew enabler. So again, it's checking for memory cards. It does work 100%, so you can in fact play PlayStation 2 games pretty well on your actual modified console. Which, may I remind you, is a pretty cool avenue for actually, extending the functionality, and why I do these hacks to begin with. Because, hey, Sony does release PlayStation 2 games for exorbitant prices, but of course they also bundle it with a software emulator. So again, if you know how to, like, exploit the system, you can actually use this to, again, to get more life out of the system to begin with. So new game, everything works just fine. That said, though, let's move on to other avenues. And what other avenues, ladies and gentlemen? Well, they also introduce things like, for instance, game patches. And I'm not talking about the stuff you download from PlayStation Network. No, we're talking about patches where you can actually make games look better or run better. For instance, a lot of games are locked to 30 frames per second, but the PlayStation 4 isn't exactly a slouch, and neither is the PlayStation 4 Pro. Some games, like Bloodborne, can be upscaled to, they can have their frame rates unlocked to go up to 60 frames per second, meaning you can get a smoother experience, and some patches will reduce the resolution of a game so it'll look fuzzier, but they'll run a lot smoother. So again, you have the option to do this with homebrew enablers as well. And of course, there's also things like mod menus, like we saw earlier in some of these situations, and of course, the opportunity for you to install Linux and actually play some Steam games underneath the PlayStation 4. So there's a lot you can do, and I'm going to run you through the gauntlet right now. So we're going to go through a bunch of examples. I'm going to show you what I think is some of the coolest stuff you can do, and by far, it's not a comprehensive view, but it is some of the coolest, advanced power user stuff you can do with a modified PlayStation 4, and I think it's pretty interesting. Now, one way that we can start off with is going back to the exploit list. If you look at this Red Dead Redemption 2 mod menu, I actually enabled it, and these are some of the few mod menus you can run in video games. So basically, by reloading the game, relaunching it with this exploit, you can actually see up into the top left at this point that I'm actually about to launch a mod menu as such that you've seen right now. So Oyster's menu has been activated, and this actually allows me to load up Red Dead Redemption 2 and modify the game a little bit by hitting the square and R1 buttons. So here I am at the beginning of the game, so I just got past the introduction tutorial missions, and of course the game is running just fine on the PS4 Pro. I'm about to leave the area, and here you get the open world a little bit. So again, this is the menu. So it is the free version. I don't know what you get with the paid one, but you can basically like modify a bunch of cool factors. So you can give yourself God mode, unlimited money, unlimited weapons, cheats in video games that used to be part of video games before they became like microtransactions. But generally, it is something cool that you can see, and of course, it's totally possible with an exploited system. So here I brought up a debug information. I'm seeing the amount of RAM that the game is using, how many frames it's calculating, the game version, everything, even to the point where the streaming requests are an actual thing. So every time you like travel into an area and it's loading things in, that's where the game is pointing stuff out. And of course, there's a bevy of things in this menu to do. You can change the time cycling, as you're seeing right now, and there's also teleportation available too. In fact, this might be one of the few times you're seeing on YouTube where I can actually blow up Arthur Morgan with dynamite and get negative honor too. So again, there's a lot of fun stuff that you can actually do with this cool little mod menu. And of course, I decided to test the absolute ends of the earth with this and see just how far I could take the Rage engine. And here you can actually see that I'm about to teleport to Saint Denis right at the beginning of the first game. So here I'm selecting, you're actually loading things in. The game is trying to like process the city. In fact, the one thing that remains is the weather from the actual like mountainous region into Saint Denis. So here the textures are loading up, the AI is loading up, everything is basically trying to come together. But one thing you can actually notice is because I'm not supposed to be here, the game is going to kill me. And it is what it is, you know, but it's fun to see different weather types that normally wouldn't be in an area actually reflected in Red Dead 2's engine. This is actually a really, really good game visually, and still to this day blows me away. But let's move on. So one thing you want to do when you're actually running this exploit is, before you get into anything, make sure you run the disable update so your actual PlayStation, when connected to the net, will actually not update to a newer system firmware. Remember, the current one is 9.03, and it might even get updated by the time this video out, so just be careful. So one thing that this mod really allows us to do is actually enable up to 60 frames per second in certain games. So there are developers out there, this is for instance Illusion0001, who has a GitHub repository of multiple patches for a lot of these video games on the PlayStation 4 that have 30 frame limits. Now what he's done over here is basically found some of these titles, like for instance, he looked at games like what is it? Let me just go to a good example. Grand Theft Auto 5. Now in GTA 5, one of the things that he's achieved is 60 FPS unlock. So effectively on patch 1.38, if you take this hex edit, all right, this string of hexadecimal characters in the actual eboot file for the game and replace it, so here you can see very carefully, for instance, BF02200031F6B8, these look very similar, with one key change. The 02 here is replaced to 01, which appears to be where the actual 30 frame rate limit is. So by changing this string to this string all throughout, you can actually get Grand Theft Auto 5 running up to 60 frames per second, which it won't ever reach because, again, it has to, you know, it's very CPU limited as they've listed, but it gets close to like 50 frames, 55. So ultimately, there are some ways for you to achieve higher frame rates. For instance, MVG released his video a week ago, where he actually looked at a good old-fashioned version of Final Fantasy VII Remake back on the PS4. Now, he actually achieved this patch and made the game run up to 60 frames, and the results are actually pretty decent as far as I can tell. Now, again, if you have a hacked PS4, you can achieve a bit extra power out of it just by using some of these patches. Now, of course, it doesn't mean that these patches are perfect. By no means are they. Okay, at some point later on when things get stressy in FF7, I'm sure the frame rate will be closer to 30 frames than it is 60. But in general gameplay, it seems like it's running smooth enough for it to be worth the effort. Now, what's absolutely badass in this entire situation is this patch right here. This is Bloodborne running at up to 60 frames per second, basically nearly locked in my experience. Now, this is a patch developed by an excellent coder known as Lance McDonald, who actually you might have known as the person who designed the PT hack that let you go out of bounds, where you could actually explore a chunk of that map. Now, over here, the patch that he made is running the game at up to 720p, okay? So it's a little lower resolution, which is why the footage may look a little fuzzier. But if you can look at the camera movements, it is in fact 60 frames per second. And this is the big thing, okay? This is one of the main reasons why you gotta hack a PS4. Up to this day, Bloodborne has not been released on PC, and this is the only way to play this game at 60 frames whatsoever. And honestly, after playing it for about an hour or two, the 720p doesn't even matter because the game plays so well with this extra frame rate. I mean, for an action game like this, especially one where you gotta know how to parry immediately on cue, this is much more needed than a higher resolution. I actually think after playing for a while, the fuzziness tends to mellow out and you really don't notice it that much. But again, look at the animation here. It is good. Even in this introductory segment, I went to one location where they had a bunch of enemies, and here I could struggle to find the frame drop. It actually seems like it plays very much at 60 frames. Now, of course, it could change as I go into much more elaborate levels later on, and the fact that the game, if, you know, rendering things like fire or alpha effects, may go slowing down at that point. But for now, the game runs relatively well. And again, this is where the 60 FPS patches make sense. And comparing it to any other version, even the PS5, you can't really even play Bloodborne at 60 frames per second there either, simply because From Software has not patched this game. This patch is exclusively developed by the community and for the community. So unless this game gets a patch somehow on the PS5 or even the PS4, this is the only way to play this game at 60 frames. Again, since this exploit could potentially run on the PS5, it would be interesting to see if we could reach those same 60 frames with the patches on these various games using that stronger hardware. That would be interesting. But for now, if you want to play Bloodborne at 60 frames, you might want to pick up a modifiable PlayStation 4. But speaking of PT, as we saw earlier with Lance McDonald's Out of Bounds video, PT itself is a piece of gaming history that needs to be preserved because it's a grim reminder of what could have been. Now, PT is obviously the playable teaser for Silent Hills, developed by Hideo Kojima and Guillermo del Toro, and also featuring Norman Reedus. Now, of course, as you can see in this game, it is absolutely a scary experience, and still to this day remains one of the freakiest experiences out there. Now, with a hacked modified PlayStation 4, you can obviously relive this as long as you have the package file, which is floating around on the internet to this day. Now, by having a hacked PS4, the ability to preserve this is absolutely magnified tenfold. This is a game that you can't even download off PlayStation Network, even if you had downloaded it previously onto a PS4 or even a PS5. I would love to do the 60 frame patch and run this on a PS5 if possible. But until the day comes where PlayStation 4 is easily emulated accurately and properly on a PC, this is the closest we get to preserving what is one of the best pieces of video game history that has ever existed. I mean, to this day, you can see the visuals alone are probably some of the best, even in comparison to stuff that comes out nowadays. And don't get me started about how freaky Lisa is when she constantly tracks you throughout the entire area. Again, the only way to relive this now is if you had it downloaded on a PlayStation and stored that somewhere very safe and sound, or if you have a hacked PlayStation and again are able to download the package, install it easily, and play more PT. But again, that isn't even the extent of the cool stuff you're able to do with the PlayStation 4 once modded. One of the coolest things is actually having PS2 games running underneath the PlayStation 4. Now, if you don't remember, PlayStation 4 has PS2 games as classics. They actually have released some high-profile games like Grand Theft Auto and Manhunt and various PS2 titles. Now, of course, these were exorbitantly priced, and Sony stopped the program, I assume because there weren't that many sales, obviously because of the pricing. But the silver lining is we do, in fact, have emulator files, since these are locally run on the PS4. By basically plugging in ISO files, you can get games like Persona 3 FES running pretty flawlessly underneath the PlayStation 4, which really enhances the value of modifying the system, because PlayStation and backwards compatibility is weird, okay? Sometimes you get the backwards compatibility, sometimes you don't. If this exploit does work in PS5s, it would be interesting to see if you could run PS4 games, PS2 games, PS1 games. Unfortunately, there isn't really a way to run PS3 games, but it is cool to see that Persona 3 FES works as well as you can expect. The process to get this running is simply by downloading tools that the community has developed, having ISO files available that you've backed up, and simply plugging them in, creating a package file, installing it as you would a standard package anyways, and playing the game. Now, of course, moving forward, there are other titles that I tested, like the brilliant Shadow the Hedgehog, which works flawlessly, running at 60 frames, and of course, I suck at this game, but you can see that running Shadow the Hedgehog, you can have a real good time and get a real good idea of the scope of PlayStation games that you can emulate underneath a modified PlayStation. Now, there's also the ability to run PSP games, but in my experience, it kept crashing, so I didn't really bother. Plus, I read the compatibility list, and for the most part, it was either untested or a lot of games just didn't work through whatever PSP emulator existed. Now, when it came to some PS2 games, like Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, they simply refused to run. And I assumed a lot of that had to do with the fact that there's something in the emulator that wasn't working well with Metal Gear Solid 3. I'm sure if I tried another region of the game or Subsistence, maybe my experience would be better. Now, you might be asking, but Muda, what about games like from the Super Nintendo era, Game Boy Advance, PlayStation 1, and for the sake of redundancy, I don't really feel like I need to cover that again, since the last time I covered PlayStation 4 emulation and jailbreaking, this was something that worked relatively flawlessly as far as my experience went. And so for me, I was more chalked and focused on looking at the PlayStation 2 lineup, which in my opinion seems to have gotten better a little bit, and I mean, here you can literally see me play Fatal Frame, which might be one of the best horror games from the PlayStation 2 era, running absolutely flawlessly again on an actual PlayStation 4 hacked. And I think for me, if this is as good as the compatibility is getting, this might be my new PlayStation 2, PS1, just general PlayStation emulation machine sitting around. In some capacities, a lot of the stuff here hasn't matured like it has on the PS3 custom firmware scene, but that's because that scene is obviously a bit more mature and a bit more, like, grounded. This one is just emerging still. So, of course, again, fingers crossed, the more this evolves, the better this becomes. One of the things I wish I could show you in this was Linux running, but unfortunately something with version 9.0 or whatever the payloads exist was not working with my actual system. I couldn't get Linux up and running yet, and I assume a lot of it has to be the fact that this jailbreak just came out, things need to be updated. But with Linux, if you looked at last time, I actually did run Halo Master Chief Collection on the actual PlayStation 4. Now, I would love to run games like Halo Infinite or Forza or whatever, just to get more Xbox exclusives technically running on a PlayStation just for the sake of it, but I actually think that because of the updates to graphic APIs like DirectX 12, the era of the gaming PC, the mid to low range gaming PC that is the PlayStation 4 with Linux is slowly coming to an end. Now, of course, that doesn't mean you still can't get some serious gaming done. Obviously, Linux comes with its own set of emulators, like Dolphin, for instance, that you can run on PS4 Linux and get some actual GameCube emulation. You might be able to get some CMU to get some Wii U running on there, and you might be able to run some pretty decent FPS or PC games on the actual, PlayStation 4 Linux. However, as the time goes on, this hardware is going to get more outdated, and games are just going to become more advanced. But when I can get Linux running, I definitely want to give it an attempt because I feel like there might be some optimizations that we can do to get more life out of it and actually turn the PS4 into something much more than even a gaming system. It would be cool if you can actually produce content directly on the PS4 and have it uploaded to the internet. That would be a fun avenue. But this montage you're seeing needs to come to an end. This is me failing at launching a payload. And hopefully, when I can fix this, I'll have another video to an end on this one. Now, to understand, let's tie things off. This jailbreak is a kernel-level jailbreak for the PlayStation 4, which is huge. And from as far as I've been reading with the developers, they've actually said that this could work on the PlayStation 5. However, they haven't been able to test it simply because some of the people haven't been able to get a PlayStation 5. Now, this is a pretty extreme point by me. If you are interested in PlayStation 5 hacks and you may have the money lying around and the patience and the ability to find a PlayStation 5 in your neighborhood, it might be worth picking one up and just storing it in the side, so in the events that a jailbreak like this occurs, having access to a PS5 with its vastly larger resources would be a pretty cool system to have as a jailbreak system as well. Again, I'm also not promoting piracy through this video at all too, so make sure you own the games that you're backing up and playing, and also, make sure that you're operating within the realm of what is TOS friendly, meaning that you don't use this to hack in things like multiplayer games, even though I don't think you can, simply because the firmware requirement has actually been up to version 9.03, so you don't have to worry too much as long as you're somebody who's worried about being hacked in a game online. The benefit of this is obviously game preservation too. Certain games like Call of Duty, for instance, actually require you to use a day one patch in order to even run the disc. So having this and the ability to install all those patches without any form of internet connectivity to the device is very friendly in preserving games like that. But also, these systems are pretty good. Look, right now, most of my PS5 gaming is strictly like 80% of it is backwards compatible stuff. So honestly, if you can't pick up a PS5, it may be worth it for you to go to a store right now, find a packaged PS4, specifically from an older release, like maybe a few months old, so they're not updated to version 9.03, and kind of go ham. I don't play many games online anyway, so having the ability to modify a system and play PS4 games, PS2 games, PS1 games, a whole bevy of various other emulators, and a lot of homebrew, and even running Linux to play other PC games like Halo Master Chief Collection seems like a pretty cool choice, okay? It seems like a lot of fun can be gained out of a box that, frankly, is only going to be going cheaper as time goes on. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, let me know what you think about this video in the comment section below. Did I comprehensively explain everything? Was it a good video? Let me know. If you like it, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike it if you dislike it. This is me, Mudahar, and I am out.